The exploration ship called moved quietly through the darkness of space. It was a beautiful vessel with a hull that looked like crystal, catching the light of distant stars as it traveled. Commander L stood at the front of the ship, looking out at the endless blackness. He had four thin arms folded behind his back, and his long head tilted as he studied the navigation screen in front of him. "We are getting close to the boundary," said Navigator. She had violet-colored eyes that narrowed as she read the information on her screen. "This is the area called Restricted Zone 7. Elle made a small sound of interest. "The humans claim this part of space belongs to them. It is strange that such a young species would demand control over 12 entire star systems." They were an ancient race. They had traveled across the galaxy for more than 40,000 years. In that time, they had watched empires grow powerful and then crumble to dust. They had studied dying stars and recorded information about species that no longer existed. Compared to them, humans were like bobbies taking their first steps. Humanity had only learned how to travel faster than light 300 years ago. They were newcomers to a universe filled with ancient beings. "The Galactic Council has agreed to respect their claims," reminded her commander. "The treaties are very clear about this. No ships from other species are allowed past the Arcturus marker without permission." "Those treaties were written after the war," El replied. He waved one of his hands in a dismissive way. "That was a conflict we had no part in. They were foolish and full of pride. They looked at humans and saw only a primitive species. They attacked and they lost, but we are not here to start a war. We are scientists. We study things." Science officer walked toward them. Her body had markings that glowed with soft light, and right now those markings were pulsing with excitement. "Commander, I have found something amazing. Our long-range sensors have detected energy signatures inside the restricted zone. These readings do not match anything in our records. This could be the greatest discovery of our entire lives." Elle thought about what she was saying. They were proud of how much they knew about the universe. They had spent thousands of years collecting information and building the largest database of knowledge in the galaxy. Finding something truly new and unknown was very rare. It was also very exciting. "How far inside the boundary is it?" he asked. "About 4 light towers from the border. There is a star system there that humans call HD 189,733. "What about their patrols? Do they have ships watching this area?" Checked her information. Human military ships patrol the border regularly, but they have to cover 12 star systems with a limited number of vessels. They are spread thin. We could go in, take our readings, and leave before they even know we were there. Our stealth technology is much better than their sensors. They will not be able to see us." El made his decision. "We will proceed. Keep our scans passive only. We do not want to send out any signals that could be detected. We go in quietly, we observe, we record what we find, and then we leave." They crossed the invisible line that marked the edge of human territory. The ship's advanced cloaking systems bent light around the hull, making it almost impossible to see. Every member of the crew moved quietly and carefully. They all knew they were breaking galactic law by entering this space without permission. But they were also driven by something that all scientists share: the deep need to understand things they do not know. The ship traveled deeper into human space. Hours passed as they moved toward the star system that had produced those strange readings. The crew worked at their stations, monitoring sensors and checking systems. Everything seemed normal at first. Then things began to change. Was the first to notice. "Commander, I am picking up something on the sensors. There are artificial structures in this system, not just a few. There are thousands of them." The main display screen came to life, showing a map of the star system they were entering. What they saw made no sense. The space between the planets should have been empty, but it was not. It was filled with objects of all sizes. Some were small platforms. Others were installations bigger than entire continents. "This cannot be right," El said. He moved closer to the screen to look more carefully. We have records of human industrial ability. They could not have built all of this. It would be impossible. The readings are correct, Commander. I have checked them 3 times. Glowing markings dimmed, which showed she was confused and uncertain. There are habitats orbiting every planet and moon in this system. There are mining operations on more asteroids than I can count. And there is something else, something near the gas giant. She made the image larger so they could see more detail. Everyone on the bridge stopped talking. There was a ring around the massive gas planet, but it was not a natural ring made of ice and rocks. This ring was made of metal and energy. It stretched around the entire planet, covering hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Pulses of power moved through it in steady waves. "They have built a ring," said in a whisper. "They have constructed a partial structure around that planet." "That is not possible," El said, but even he did not believe his own words anymore. Humans are a young species. Building something like this would require resources and knowledge far beyond anything we thought they had. Continued her scans. "Commander, there is more. I am detecting shipyards. There are dozens of them throughout this system. The ships they are building are massive. Some of them are the size of small moons." El felt his understanding of the universe beginning to crack. Everything the thought they knew about humanity was wrong. The young species they had dismissed as newcomers had been hiding something enormous. Before he could think of what to do next, every alarm on the ship started making noise at the same time. "We have been found," announced. Her hands moved quickly across her control panel. "A human vessel is coming toward us. It appeared from behind one of the orbital platforms." Her voice shook slightly as she continued. "Commander, they were waiting for us. They knew we were here." "How is that possible? Our cloaking system should have hidden us completely." "They knew we were coming before we crossed the border. They let us enter on purpose." The view screen changed to show the ship that was approaching them. It was a beautiful and dangerous-looking vessel. Its hull was angular and covered with weapon systems that this computer could not identify. Lights along its side showed a name painted on the hull, USS Sovereign. A communication signal forced its way through their systems. A human face appeared on the screen. The female officer had dark hair pulled back tightly, and her face showed no anger, only calm control. "Vessel, this is Captain Maria Santos of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered restricted space without permission. You will shut down your engines and prepare to be escorted to Station Argus. You do not have a choice in this matter." El tried to keep his voice steady and diplomatic. "Captain Santos, I am Commander L of the Science Collective. We apologize for entering your space. We detected unusual readings and let our curiosity guide us instead of following proper rules. We will leave immediately." Captain Santos did not smile. "That is no longer possible, Commander. You have seen things that cannot be unseen. Your ship will follow the Sovereign. If you try to escape or deviate from the path we give you, we will consider it a hostile action." The communication ended before El could say anything else. "Commander," said quietly, 6 more ships have appeared on our sensors. We are completely surrounded. Their weapons could destroy us in seconds." El looked at the tactical display. He looked at the impossible ring around the distant planet. He looked at the warships that had appeared from nowhere. Everything he thought he knew about humans was wrong. "Do what they say," he ordered. "Follow them." They had come looking for knowledge. Now they would learn far more than they had ever expected. The journey to Station Argus took several hours. They flew in the middle of a formation of human warships, surrounded on all sides. El stood at the observation window the entire time, watching the impossible things they passed. They flew by shipyards where vessels larger than anything in the fleet were being constructed. Thousands of workers and machines moved across the hulls like insects on a great beast. They passed habitats that floated in the darkness, each one home to millions of humans living their lives in the void between worlds. They saw mining operations that were tearing apart asteroids and moons, feeding raw materials into factories that never stopped working. "I have been counting," said quietly, standing beside her commander. "Based on what we have seen so far, the industrial output in this single system is greater than the combined output of the 20 largest economies in known space." Al said nothing. Words seemed useless in the face of what they were witnessing. Station Argus appeared ahead of them, and it was unlike anything they had expected. It hung in space like a city that had been turned inside out. Massive arms extended in every direction, each one longer than most space stations they had seen in their travels. Lights glittered across its surface, and ships of all sizes moved around it constantly, coming and going like blood cells through a living body. It was guided into a docking bay by automated systems. The ship looked small and fragile compared to the vessels around it. When the airlock opened, a squad of human soldiers was waiting for them. They wore heavy armor that covered their entire bodies, with helmets that hid their faces. But their body language was professional rather than aggressive. They were guards, not attackers. "Commander L and your senior officers will come with us," the squad leader announced. His voice came through speakers in his helmet. "The rest of your crew will stay on your ship. They will be given food, water, and anything else they need." L and followed without arguing. There was no point in resistance. The corridors of Station Argus were wide and busy. Humans walked past them constantly, some in military uniforms, others in regular clothes. Many of them looked tired, with the kind of exhaustion that comes from hard work and long hours. This was not a military base. It was a working city. They passed windows that looked out over construction bays. L stopped at one of them, staring at what he saw. A ship was being built there, but calling it a ship did not seem right. It was enormous, bigger than anything he had ever seen that was designed to move through space. "What is that vessel?" he asked the guard who was leading them. The guard glanced at it without much interest. "That is the Leviathan. It is a colony ship. When it is finished, it will carry 2 million people to new star systems. It can support itself for journeys that last hundreds of years without needing to stop anywhere. You are planning to expand beyond the restricted zone." The guard started walking again, without answering the question. They were brought to a large room with a table in the center and chairs arranged around it. Some of the chairs were designed for human bodies, but others had clearly been made for beings with different shapes. They were not the first non-human visitors to this room. Captain Maria Santos was already there, along with an older male officer. He had gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen many years of service. His uniform carried symbols of high rank. "I am Admiral Christopher Grant," the older man said. "Please sit down." They took seats that fit their bodies. Elle noticed that the chairs had been placed in positions of equality, not subordination. The humans were treating them as guests, not prisoners, at least for now. "You are not the first ones to cross our border without permission," Admiral Grant began. His voice was calm and measured. "They came with weapons and demands. They wanted to conquer us. They came with trade offers. They thought they could trick us into agreements that would benefit only them. They came with biological weapons. They tried to release diseases that would make humans easier to control. Each of them left our space with a very different understanding of humanity than they had when they arrived." "We came only because we wanted to learn," Elle said. "They have no interest in territory or conquest. We are scientists. We collect knowledge." "And now you have knowledge you were never supposed to have." Admiral Grant leaned back in his chair. "You have seen our shipyards, our mining operations, our defensive systems. I am sure you have many questions." "Yes," Elle admitted, "many questions." Captain Santos touched a control, and a holographic image appeared above the table. It showed a timeline stretching back 300 years. "When humanity first developed faster-than-light travel, we were innocent," she began. "We announced ourselves to the galaxy. We sent out messages of peace and friendship. We expected to be welcomed by older civilizations who would guide us and help us grow. Her voice carried a note of bitter memory. What we found instead was a universe full of ancient powers who saw us as either resources to be used or threats to be destroyed. The image changed to show the war. El watched recordings of human cities burning under orbital bombardment. He saw ships being torn apart in space battles. He saw the bodies of the dead. "That taught us the most important lesson we have ever learned," Captain Santos continued. "No one was going to save us. There was no galactic police force that would protect a young species from those who wanted to hurt us. If we wanted to survive, we had to protect ourselves." Leaned forward in her seat. The things we saw when we entered this system, the scale of construction. How is any of this possible? The records we have about human industrial capacity cannot account for even a small fraction of what we observed. Admiral Grant smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. What the galaxy sees is what we want them to see. Our public colonies, our registered trading ships, our diplomatic missions. All of that represents perhaps 3% of human civilization. 3%, repeated. Her voice was barely a whisper. The restricted zones are not empty territory that we are keeping from others out of greed. These zones are where we have been building for the last 200 years. We have taken apart entire moons to get raw materials. We have constructed habitats that are home to billions of people. We have developed technologies that we do not share with anyone because sharing them would reveal abilities we want to keep secret. The holographic display showed maps of the restricted zones. There were 12 star systems, and each one was filled with the same impossible level of development they had seen when they first entered human space. El tried to understand what he was hearing. The information was restructuring everything he thought he knew about power in the galaxy. The humans were not a minor species struggling to find their place among ancient civilizations. They were something else entirely, something hidden, something vast. "Why are you telling us this?" he asked finally. "Why reveal your secrets to us now?" Admiral Grant stood and walked to a window that looked out at the endless construction happening beyond the station. "Because you are scientists, not warriors. Because they have spent 40,000 years watching and recording rather than conquering and destroying. And because we need witnesses." "Witnesses to what?" The Admiral turned to face them. His expression was serious and heavy with purpose. "Something is coming. A threat that will arrive at our borders in 18 months. When it does, we intend to respond in a way that will send a message to every species in the galaxy. We want that message to be recorded by the most respected observers in known space. We want the truth of what happens to be preserved and shared." El understood then. Their discovery had not been an accident. The humans had known they were coming. They had allowed them to enter restricted space because of who they were. "You need someone to tell your story," he said. "Every species has myths about what happens to those who threaten them, stories that grow larger with each telling. We prefer facts that can be, facts that cannot be or dismissed, facts recorded by witnesses that everyone trusts." The Admiral returned to his seat. "Let me tell you about the Dominion of Ra and what we have been preparing for them." Admiral Grant activated the holographic display again. A map of the galaxy appeared above the table, showing territories marked in different colors. One section was highlighted in dark red, spanning hundreds of star systems. "The Dominion of Ra," the Admiral began. "They have been growing their power for the past 100 years. In that time, they have absorbed 17 different species into their empire. Some were conquered through war. Others were forced to join through threats and pressure. None of them had a choice." El studied the map. They had records of the Dominion. They were known as a brutal civilization that believed strength gave them the right to take whatever they wanted. Weaker species existed only to serve stronger ones. That was their philosophy. "Their expansion follows a pattern we have studied carefully," Captain Santos added. They move outward from their core systems, absorbing everything in their path. Based on their current direction and speed, they will reach the borders of what the galaxy believes is human space in approximately 18 months. The public human colonies, Elle said, beginning to understand. The 3% you mentioned. Exactly. When they arrive, they expect to find a young civilization with limited defenses. Their intelligence reports show that humanity has about 200 warships and a few colony worlds. They see us as an easy target, a quick victory that will give them new territory and a new slave population. Admiral Grant zoomed the map to show the expected invasion route. They are assembling a fleet of 12,000 vessels for this attack. It is one of the largest military forces they have ever gathered. They want to make sure there is no chance of failure. Calculated in her head, 12,000 ships against 200, that is overwhelming force. Even the most advanced technology could not overcome such numbers. You are correct, Admiral Grant said. If we only had 200 ships, we would have no chance, but we do not have 200 ships. He changed the display to show new information. Fleet deployments appeared on the screen, spreading across all 12 restricted star systems. Our current active combat vessels number 47,000. We have an additional 30,000 in reserve that can be activated within 6 months if needed. Beyond that, we have automated defense platforms seeded throughout human space. There are so many of them that we stopped counting years ago. Elle stared at the numbers. They did not seem real. That is more military strength than the 3 largest powers in the galaxy combined. We are not interested in becoming a galactic power, Admiral Grant replied. We do not want to conquer other species or control trade routes or build an empire. Every ship we have built, every weapon we have created, every soldier we have trained exists for one purpose only, to make sure humanity cannot be destroyed. Was struggling to process what she was hearing. The Dominion has no idea. They think they are attacking a weak civilization. They have no understanding of what is actually waiting for them. Their intelligence network is good, but we are better at hiding than they are at finding. Their scouts have observed our public colonies, our visible patrol routes, our diplomatic vessels. They have counted our registered ships and estimated our population based on the worlds they can see. Everything they know about us is exactly what we want them to know. Captain Santos pulled up battle projections on the display. Lines of movement showed how the Dominion fleet would enter human space and how human forces would respond. We are going to let them attack, she explained. We want them to commit their entire fleet to the invasion. We want all 12,000 ships deep inside what they think is our territory. And then we are going to show them what was actually there the whole time. You will destroy them completely, Elle said. No, Admiral Grant's voice became harder. We are not like the Dominion. We do not want to wipe out entire civilizations. We do not want to kill millions of beings who were probably forced to serve in a war they did not choose. What we want is to send a message so clear and powerful that no species in this galaxy will ever think of humanity as acceptable prey again. The display changed to show tactical plans. Elle saw positions marked throughout the restricted zones where human ships would be waiting in ambush. He saw defensive networks that could trap and disable enemy vessels. He saw the full scope of what humans had been preparing for 2 centuries. We will disable their fleet, Captain Santos said. Our weapons are designed to take away their ability to fight without killing everyone aboard. Once their ships are powerless, we will remove the crews and send them home unharmed. Their vessels will be taken apart and recycled for materials. You could destroy them, observed. You clearly have the power to do so. Why hold back? Admiral Grant turned to face the directly. Because dead enemies become martyrs, stories are told about them. Their memory is honored. Eventually, some future generation decides to avenge them. But enemies who are defeated completely and publicly, who are captured and then released, who are sent home with nothing but the memory of how helpless they were, Those enemies become warnings. They tell others what happens when you challenge humanity. The logic was cold but clear. The humans were not planning a battle, they were planning a demonstration. The documentation capabilities are known throughout the galaxy, Admiral Grant continued. Your records are accepted as truth by every major power. When you publish information, people believe it. We want you to witness what happens when the Dominion arrives. We want you to record every moment. And we want you to share those records with anyone who might be thinking about attacking human space. El sat in silence for a long moment. He was a scientist. His people had spent 40,000 years observing and recording the history of the galaxy. They had never involved themselves in conflicts between other species. They watched, they documented, and they remained neutral. But what the humans were asking was not really involvement. It was exactly what they always did. Watch, record, share the truth. What you are describing, he said slowly, is using us to spread fear of humanity throughout the galaxy. Not fear, Admiral Grant replied. Respect. Fear makes people desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. Respect makes people careful. Careful people think before they act. We do not want other species to be afraid of us. We want them to understand that attacking humanity is not worth the cost. Captain Santos leaned forward. We have been hiding for 200 years. We have watched the try to enslave us. We have watched the try to cheat us. We have watched the try to poison us. Each time we dealt with the threat quietly without revealing our true strength. But the Dominion is different. They are too large and too aggressive to handle quietly. This time, we need the galaxy to see what happens. And if we refuse, asked, if we choose not to participate in your demonstration, then we will return you to space with our thanks for your visit, Admiral Grant said. We will not force you to do anything. But consider this. The Dominion will eventually threaten every species that is not part of their empire, including yours. What happens in 18 months will determine whether they continue expanding or whether they learn to stay within their own borders. Do you not want to know how that story ends? El looked at his officers. His violet eyes were troubled but curious. His bioluminescent markings were pulsing rapidly with scientific excitement. They had come looking for unknown energy signatures. They had found something far more interesting. We will stay, El decided. We will witness your demonstration and record what happens, but understand that we will document everything exactly as it occurs. If humanity does something shameful, that will be in our records too. Admiral Grant nodded. We would expect nothing less. The truth is the only weapon that matters in the long run. We are confident in what that truth will show. He stood and offered his hand in the human gesture of agreement. El extended one of his 4 arms and grasped it. Welcome to the beginning of a new era in galactic history, the Admiral said. I hope you brought plenty of recording equipment. The 18 months passed quickly for the observers. Admiral Grant had given them permission to travel freely within the restricted zones, and they used that freedom to document everything they could. What they found continued to amaze them. El spent weeks visiting the great shipyards where human vessels were being built. He watched workers who moved with purpose and skill, constructing machines of war that were beautiful in their deadly efficiency. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, designed not just to fight but to survive. Redundant systems backed up other redundant systems. Armor layers protected vital components. These were ships built by a species that expected to be attacked and refused to die. Studied the defensive networks that surrounded human space. She found layers upon layers of protection, each one designed to work with the others. Sensor nets could detect approaching vessels from light years away. Automated platforms carried weapons that could disable entire fleets. Communication systems connected everything together, allowing human forces to respond instantly to any threat. The sophistication of it all went far beyond what she had expected from such a young species. Was given access to some of the research facilities. She learned that humans had been studying the technologies of every species they encountered, not to copy them, but to understand how to counter them. They knew the weaknesses of weapons. They understood the vulnerabilities of ships. They had analyzed every threat they might face and prepared responses to each one. They are obsessed with survival, reported to Elle after one of her visits. Everything they do comes back to that single goal. They do not build weapons because they want to conquer. They build weapons because they are afraid of being conquered. It is fear that drives them, but they have turned that fear into strength. Elle thought about this observation often. They had lived for 40,000 years without facing existential threats. They had achieved stability through wisdom and careful neutrality. But humans had been attacked from the moment they announced themselves to the galaxy. Their entire civilization had developed under the shadow of potential extinction. It made sense that they would build so obsessively to protect themselves. As the months passed, the watched human society prepare for the coming conflict. There was no panic. There was no visible fear. Instead, there was a quiet determination that spread through every level of their civilization. Shipyard workers increased their hours. Military personnel trained with greater intensity. Civilians practiced evacuation procedures without complaint. Everyone understood what was coming, and everyone was ready to do their part. There was eventually moved to an observation position far from the expected battle zone, but close enough to record everything. The ship's sensors were enhanced with human technology, giving it the ability to see and capture details that would have been impossible with their original equipment. 3 days before the expected arrival of the Dominion fleet, Admiral Grant visited them personally. He looked older than when they had first met, the weight of command showing in the lines of his face, but his eyes were clear and calm. "The evacuation of the public colonies is complete," he informed Elle. "Every human being has been moved to secure locations within the restricted zones. When the Dominion arrives, they will find empty worlds." "Will that not make them suspicious?" asked, "finding their targets abandoned?" "Perhaps, but by the time they understand what it means, it will be too late for them to escape." Admiral Grant turned to look out the observation window at the stars. "I want to thank you for staying. What happens next will be studied for centuries. Having records of the event will ensure that the truth cannot be distorted or—" "We have documented everything we could," Elle replied. "Your shipyards, your defenses, your preparations. When we share these records, the galaxy will understand what humanity has built in secret." "Good, that is exactly what we need." The Admiral paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Commander, I want you to understand something. What we are about to do is not something we take pleasure in. Every being on those Dominion ships is someone's child, someone's partner, someone's friend. Many of them were forced into military service by a government that does not care about their lives. We will do everything possible to avoid killing them unnecessarily." "But you will kill some of them." "Yes, some will die. War makes that unavoidable, even when you try to minimize casualties. I wish there was another way, but the Dominion does not respond to diplomacy. They only understand strength, so strength is what we will show them." Admiral Grant left shortly after, returning to his flagship to take command of the coming battle. Elle watched him go and felt something he had not expected: respect for the burden the human carried. Leading a civilization in war was not something to envy. The day of arrival came with unexpected quiet. Space seemed more empty than usual, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The crew sat at their stations, sensors active, recording equipment running, waiting for history to unfold before them. The Dominion fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 12,000 warships spread across an enormous area of space, each one bristling with weapons, each one crewed by soldiers who expected an easy victory. The sight of so much military power gathered in one place was terrifying even from a safe distance. Overlord Hal commanded the invasion from his flagship at the center of the formation. He was a veteran of 4 successful conquests, and he had been chosen for this campaign because of his experience and his ruthlessness. His species believed that the strong had the right to take from the weak, and humans were clearly weak. Their tiny fleet and handful of colonies would fall quickly. Begin scanning for enemy positions, Hal ordered his officers. Find their defensive forces and target them for immediate destruction. His sensors swept across the system and found nothing. No enemy ships, no defensive platforms, no resistance of any kind. The colony whirled, one of his officers reported. It appears to be empty, no life signs detected. Hal frowned. They knew we were coming. They have fled like the cowards they are. No matter. We will take their worlds and use them as bases to hunt down the survivors. Continue advance. The Dominion fleet moved deeper into what they believed was human space. They passed the orbit of the outer planets without encountering any opposition. They approached the inner system where the main colony should have been. Still nothing. This is wrong, Hal muttered to himself. Where are their ships? Our intelligence said they had at least 200 vessels. Even cowards do not abandon their homes without leaving some defense. The answer to his question came moments later. Human ships began appearing on sensors. Not the few hundred that intelligence had predicted, but thousands of them. They emerged from behind moons, rose up from asteroid fields, dropped their cloaking systems to become visible. They came from every direction at once, surrounding the Dominion fleet in a sphere of metal and fire. Hal stared at the tactical display as the numbers climbed higher and higher. 5,000 human ships, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. The count kept rising. Overlord, his communications officer said, voice trembling, we are receiving a transmission. Admiral Grant's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, almost peaceful, like a teacher about to deliver a lesson. Overlord Hal, this is Admiral Christopher Grant of the United Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is surrounded. Your weapons cannot overcome our numbers. Your ships cannot escape the formations we have established around you. You have one chance to surrender peacefully. If you do not take it, we will disable your fleet by force. The choice is yours. Hal felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare, genuine fear. But pride was stronger than fear. Human, he growled, the Dominion does not surrender. We will destroy your pathetic fleet and feast on the ruins of your worlds. Admiral Grant nodded slowly, as if he had expected this response. Very well, remember that we offered you mercy. The transmission ended. The Battle of the Betrayed Stars, as they would later call it, was about to begin. The sensors recorded everything as the battle began. L stood at the main display, watching history unfold with the same careful attention his ancestors had given to 1,000 other pivotal moments in galactic history, but nothing they had documented compared to this. Overlord Hal ordered his fleet to attack. 12,000 Dominion warships surged forward, weapons charging, ready to prove that the universe still belonged to the strong. They had conquered 17 civilizations with these tactics. They had broken the will of species that had existed for. They expected humanity to be no different. They were wrong. The human fleet did not engage in traditional combat. Instead of exchanging fire in the usual way, they demonstrated capabilities that they had never witnessed in all their years of observation. The first wave of Dominion ships fired their weapons at the human vessels closing in around them. The energy bolts and missiles flew true toward their targets. And then the human ships were simply not there anymore. They moved with a speed and coordination that seemed impossible. Entire squadrons shifted position in perfect unison, dodging incoming fire while maintaining their encirclement of the enemy fleet. It was like watching a dance that had been practiced for centuries. Their reaction times, breathed, her instruments capturing every detail. They are moving before the weapons even fire. They must be predicting attack patterns based on enemy ship positions. Pointed at another part of the display, look there. A group of human vessels had closed with a section of the Dominion fleet, But instead of destroying the enemy ships, they fired weapons that this computer could not identify. Beams of strange energy struck the Dominion vessels, and immediately those ships went dark. Their engines stopped. Their weapons went silent. Their lights flickered and died. The ships were still intact, but they were powerless. Targeted electromagnetic disruption, realized. They are disabling the ships without destroying them. The crews are alive but helpless. The pattern repeated across the entire battlefield. Human ships darted through the Dominion formation like predators among prey, their strange weapons reducing enemy vessels to drifting hulks one after another. The Dominion tried to fight back, tried to land meaningful blows against their attackers, but the humans were always one step ahead. They knew where every shot would be fired before it happened. They responded to every tactic with perfect counters. Overlord Hal watched his mighty fleet being systematically dismantled. Half his ships were already disabled, floating dead in space. His weapons could not hit enemies that moved like ghosts. His shields could not stop weapons that seemed to pass through them like they were not there. Everything the Dominion had learned about warfare over centuries of conquest was useless against this enemy. All ships emergency withdrawal, he finally ordered. Retreat to the fleet rally point. But there was nowhere to retreat to. The human formation had completely surrounded them. Every escape route was blocked. Ships that tried to flee found themselves facing fresh human squadrons that had been waiting for exactly that response. The trap was perfect in every direction. In less than 4 hours, it was over. 12,000 Dominion warships drifted powerless in space, their crews alive but unable to do anything except wait. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed. The greatest invasion fleet the Dominion had ever assembled had been defeated without landing a meaningful blow. Admiral Grant's flagship, the USS Sovereign, moved to the center of the disabled fleet. A transmission broadcast on all frequencies, reaching not just the captured Dominion ships but also relay stations throughout the galaxy. This message was meant to be heard by everyone. This is Admiral Christopher Grant addressing the Dominion of Ra and all civilizations of the known galaxy. The Dominion invasion fleet has been neutralized. Every ship has been disabled. The crews will be returned to Dominion space unharmed. The ships themselves will be dismantled and recycled. This is not a negotiation. L ordered his crew to make sure every word was recorded with perfect clarity. This was the moment the humans had been preparing for. "You came to take our worlds," Admiral Grant continued. "You came to enslave our people. You came to add humanity to your collection of conquered species. You came believing us weak because we did not show our strength openly. Now you understand how wrong you were." The display behind Grant showed a strategic map updating in real time. Thousands of additional human vessels were revealing themselves throughout the border regions, formations that had remained hidden until now. What you have witnessed today represents a small portion of our true capability. The forces that disabled your fleet were a single defensive formation. We have many others. We have been building for 200 years, preparing for the day when someone would mistake our silence for weakness. The Admiral's voice carried no anger, no triumph, only a calm certainty that was somehow more intimidating than any threat. "We do not seek war. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek to rule over other species or control their destinies. We ask only to be left alone, to develop in peace, to explore the stars in our own way. But let it be understood throughout the galaxy that peace with humanity requires respect. And respect requires understanding that there are consequences for aggression against us." The transmission ended. L watched as human vessels began the methodical process of securing the disabled fleet. Shuttles moved between ships, removing Dominion crews and transporting them to holding vessels. The prisoners were treated firmly but not cruelly. They were given food, water, and medical attention. They were enemies, but they were not being punished for following orders given by their leaders. The work continued for days. 12,000 ships worth of crew members were processed, identified, and prepared for transport home. Not a single prisoner was executed or harmed beyond what was necessary for security. The humans were demonstrating that they could be merciful even in victory. When the last transport ship departed carrying Dominion prisoners back to their own space, Admiral Grant made one final transmission. To the Dominion of Ra, your people are returning to you. Receive them with honor, for they fought bravely against an enemy they did not understand. Learn from what has happened here. Choose peace, and you will find humanity to be a good neighbor. Choose aggression again, and the next demonstration will not be so gentle. The galaxy would take years to fully process what had happened. The records spread across known space and shared and studied by every major power. The images of 12,000 warships being disabled without losses on the human side became the defining moment of an era. Some species reacted with fear, pulling their ships back from human borders and increasing their own military preparations. Others reached out with diplomatic offers, seeking to establish friendly relations with this newly revealed power. The Dominion itself fell into internal chaos as its leadership tried to explain how their greatest fleet had been defeated so completely. But the most significant reaction was the one the humans had hoped for: careful respect. Species that had considered humanity a potential target quietly removed those plans from consideration. Powers that had thought about testing human defenses decided it was wiser to leave them alone. The galaxy did not come to love humanity, but it learned to treat them as equals rather than prey. They eventually returned to space, carrying records that would be studied for centuries. El spent years writing his analysis of what he had witnessed, trying to capture not just the events but their meaning. In the end, he concluded that the humans had understood something fundamental about the universe that older species had forgotten. Power was not just about strength. It was about patience, preparation, and the wisdom to know when to reveal what you were truly capable of. Humanity had hidden for 200 years, building in secret, suffering attacks without responding at full force. They had endured insults and aggression and dismissal from species who thought they were superior. And then, when the moment was right, they had shown the galaxy what that patience had created. The universe would never look at the small blue planet the same way again. The young species that had stumbled into the stars as naive explorers had become something else entirely. A civilization that would not be conquered, would not be enslaved, would not be dismissed. They had entered restricted space hopping to find scientific curiosities. Instead, they had witnessed the birth of a new power in the galaxy. The humans had wanted witnesses to their demonstration. Now the entire cosmos had their story, and no one would forget the lesson it taught.